Pope Francis has joined the ranks of AI skeptics, citing fears that artificial intelligence might lack the divine virtues of compassion, mercy, and forgiveness. A bit ironic coming from an institution that has perfected the art of lacking virtue. Perhaps he's concerned that AI confessors would be too binary in their judgments. The Pope's plea for a global treaty on AI ethics comes hot on the heels of an AI-generated fashion faux pas featuring him in a white puffer jacket, proving that even the Pope isn't safe from the sartorial whims of algorithms. So get ready for a world where the Pope might start excommunicating rogue robots. This story is from Religion News by Nicole Winfield on December 14th, 2023. All right, let's start with Aaron. What are your thoughts on the Pope's scared of AI?
Well, I don't think he really should be. I don't know if you've seen this picture. All you have to do is search for, Pope, white puffer jacket. You'll see the image. The Pope looks pretty awesome in this
I
coat.
thought it was an awesome picture.
He looks pretty amazing. He should be wearing one of those all the time.
Yep.
Everywhere he goes, he's going to get bigger audiences. He's going to get bigger crowds. He's going to get better record deals. It's just going to be amazing for the Pope. It's going to change his life, really.
He's going to get into all the VIP rooms.
He's just getting everywhere. It's pretty amazing. He should be wearing this all the time now. But all joking aside, when we think about AI, we usually think about movies like The Terminator or The Matrix, where AIs take over the world and destroy humanity. Where I think that's easy to imagine. That's probably not the biggest risk from AI. Yeah, and from the article, it says freedom and peaceful coexistence are threatened. And this is a quote from the Pope's statement. Quote, whenever human beings yield to the temptation to selfishness, self-interest, the desire for profit, and the thirst for power. And I totally agree with that. That's not really even a specifically Christian message. That's a humanist message, right? We should be less selfish. We should be less self-interested, and we should not put money and profit first, that we should, serve other people and help other people. And because we're all in this boat together, and so I kind of agree with his with that part of his message. And I also kind of agree that AI can be dangerous, not necessarily because somebody dresses you up in a white puffer jacket, but because it's humans writing these AIs. These AIs aren't just coming out of nowhere. It's programmers, and I'm a programmer. I write code, and your code is going to reflect who you are as a person and the culture in which you live. As much as we try not to let that happen, it's going to happen. And there are a couple of examples. Many years ago, there was a group, I can't remember where it was from, but they were trying to train an AI to recognize photos of tanks. You can imagine the applications for that. And so after they trained the AI, they started giving it real world pictures. And well, it turned out that what they'd really trained the AI to do was to recognize when the sun was out and a sunny day, because all the information they'd given the AI was during when the sun was out. And so
be careful what you wish for. Right?
Yes. Oops. And another example that doesn't really have to do with AI, but just has to do with the biases that maybe we don't recognize that we have. Kodak, back in the days when film cameras, when the cameras used to actually have what's called film in it, and light would hit the film, and that's where you would get your pictures. And you have to take it to a store to get it developed and all that stuff. Anyway, quality control at Kodak used what they called a Shirley card to help calibrate the photos. And Shirley was a woman with white skin and brown hair. Well, it turns out that when your reference image is somebody a brunette with white skin, it doesn't really help pictures of people that don't have white skin turn out very well. Oops. And in both these cases, nobody set out to do anything wrong. It just happened that our biases that kind of got in the way of things. And so we do have to be really careful on how AIs are programmed and trained. And there really does need to be, I think, legislation around it, an understanding around it. Legislation at worst, but some kind of ethical code or conduct or something around it as we continue to develop these technologies. Jonathan?
I don't know. I might ruffle a few feathers through this, but that's okay. I think that the points the molester-in-chief brought up are valid concerns, and they have been being talked about at the MIT bulletin I get on AI. I get that weekly, and it's always a hot topic because there's new breakthroughs in AI just about every week. So, and the large problem about safeguards in AI and the various ways AI can be misused is he summarized many of those concerns in the article, but there's a lot more. There's actually an article out with the possibility of human extinction by AI. And but that's another entire conversation we don't need to have here. But the EU has addressed some concerns with its new regulations on AI, which was agreed to by all 27 members of the EU on December 8th, and it was adopted on December 8th, and so it is actual law in the EU. I have not been able to find a copy of it to see what they actually are, but it is another thing to in the step in the right direction. They designed it to be sort of like boilerplate for further adjustments and use by other countries to establish their own policies on AI. So hopefully, there's at least movement in that direction because it is sorely needed. There wasn't a lot of direction when the internet first came out, and it rapidly became a chaotic mess. So now it's useful, and there's been a lot more policing and a lot more companies who are trying to do things about it. Will that happen with AI, or will AI do that to itself? Another big question. Basically, it's a brave new world, and we need new rules to keep human rights secure and human safety. If you cannot keep up with climate change, AI, politics, elections, extinctions, sea level rise, and Category 6 storms, forest fires, and an authoritarian idiocy, you might be facing a little bit of crisis overload and getting numb to all of it. And that's something we need to guard against. Sure, there's a lot going on, but this one might actually be one of the more critical ones. So I think everybody should read up a little bit on it and see where their positions are. That's an ought, not a should. But it is an important issue. So, Kelly?
Somebody did the quote that the Pope doesn't want quote unquote, technology lacking human values of compassion, mercy, morality, and forgiveness. And honestly, I agree with that. That's awesome, right? The problem is that we don't have those things throughout humanity. And it's going to be humans that are creating the AI. So even if it's regulated, and I'm not even sure how we're going to be able to do that, these things, these detrimental things are going to keep popping up because someone somewhere is going to be willing to spend the time and the money to make it. And even if it's just for fun, let alone for profit, right? So getting back to the regulation, how do you even regulate something like that? Look at all the viruses and the malware out there right now, and you can see no matter what the Pope wants, this is going to happen. And another thing is, and Aaron mentioned this too, is that the AI doesn't always learn what it should be learning. And that to me is the scariest thing about AI. A study by Johns Hopkins University and the Georgia Institute of Technology released in 2022, and some of you might remember this, showed that AI programs began to show a racial bias. And now what other things are we going to teach machines? I worry about people having enough money to design better AI than we have right now to try and control the way that we think. And they're already analyzing our web browsing. They're designing ads just for us. And isn't that already really just a tiny little bit of attempt to influence your actions and your thoughts? They're already starting to brainwash us as it is. Can you imagine how much better this can get in the future? And that to me is really, really scary. I was just thinking, and I mentioned it before, a lot of these things would be great, really great plots for sci-fi films, right? Scott, what do you think?
I agree. We'll get tickets and we'll go together to these shows. But, one thing that I find interesting about these kind of stories is so there's this new technology and we're all learning how to deal with it. And so a lot of times you can really see, a person's mettle when they're facing something that's not so rehearsed and not so, old hat. It's a new thing. And so we have this horizon, right? This frontier of technology. And so we're all learning, we're not really sure what's in the future and so on. And so, the Pope obviously he was not responding to the puffer jacket. Okay. That was just a funny thing that happened, right before he said it. But it's interesting to see that the way that he's approaching it, and some of it it exposes some of the thought process that are going on underneath. Kelly, you were just saying about how he had said the risks of technology lacking human values of compassion, mercy, morality, and forgiveness are too great. Human value. So he's worried that these AIs will not exhibit human values. But correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't the Bible teach us that humanity is broken? Aren't we the problem? Isn't human morality the issue? Wasn't it weak and evil humans that brought suffering to the world? And
I guess the Pope just forgot that part of the Bible.
Maybe he forgot that. Maybe he was leaning too much on his own understanding. Who knows what? But then also there was another thing that he said too that doesn't quite jibe with his traditional stance. And so he said, technology companies alone cannot be trusted to regulate themselves. And I just want to let the irony of that set in for a second. This is the Pope. He's the leader of the Holy Catholic Church saying that, well, these people have motivated self-interest here. Should they be trusted to police themselves? The Catholic Church, of course, has a long and well-established history of cover-ups and of playing three-card Monte, shuffling around pedophile priests and so on, and doing that to protect their own motivated self-interest. Okay, and so I don't know. It doesn't quite ring as sincere as much if it's coming from the Pope. And so it's interesting. Like I said, it's interesting to see how people react to this because it kind of exposes some of that inner thinking. But I do like. I think it was Aaron that first brought it up about how the real, and Kelly, you mentioned it as well about with AI proliferation into our daily lives. Really what we're seeing mostly is ad revenue, right? It's ad manipulation. What kind of ad, what can I put in front of somebody's eyes that will make them give money, right? And so that's going to be our first challenge before, the AI robot overlords take over the world. The thing we're going to have to deal with is people using AI because there's some advantages that AI does have over human beings. It's not as diverse and not as flexible and as the human problem-solving machine, but it has way more memory. It remembers everything and it can process way faster. And so that's the kind of thing that's happening now. That's the kind of thing, when you talk about how, where did this ad come? I was just talking about buying this the other day and now the ad's popping up. Some people say, is your phone listening in on you? But very often it's just that the computer, these massive databases of everything you've ever done, or at least we're going in that direction. These massive databases of your habits, your preferences, your behaviors. They know that they have a 90% probability of getting you to buy something if they throw this in front of you right at this moment. And it's moving from there too. And this is not necessarily any particular political party, but we can see that companies are willing to manipulate their customers, and politicians are willing to manipulate their constituents, and power brokers are willing to manipulate the population at large. We can see that this is AI is going to be a great and powerful tool. I think that some of the first regulation that should be to protect our information, should be to protect our personal private information, and we can do that. It's perfectly acceptable to make it illegal to hold on to somebody's data for a certain amount of time or to collect certain types of data. There are areas where we do that already. Medical records, for example. Companies can't can't retain your medical record information as long as they can, like, what kind of beer you like and that kind of stuff. And so there are lines out there, and I think that as we develop, I don't want the thought of the Terminator coming to get us to overshadow the very real threats that are out there now, and a lot of it has to do with that information gathering. And Aaron, what can you add anything to that?
No, I totally agree. I think there's way too much personal information that isn't protected, and I think the social media companies, in particular, but technology companies, they're all eventually going to get into this data brokering business. There's data out there about you that's being bought and sold. That most people don't even know about and aren't even aware of, and that I think that needs to stop. I think there needs to be regulations to make it illegal to collect usage data on people as they're browsing the internet. Nothing should be specifically tied to you. You shouldn't be able to have a personal advertising profile, right? That should be against the law. It should be against the law for them to listen to your voice. And when you're having a conversation, then all of a sudden have ads about whatever you were talking about around Thanksgiving or holiday dinner show up online. That's creepy. And you think it's a benign problem, but those databases can be bought and sold to anybody. There's nothing protecting them. And then if a nefarious person gets a hold of them, well, what kind of things can they do to influence electorates and influence elections and influence, what people think? And then AI can be used to, munge that data even better and get even more targeted engagement on people to change the way they think, the way they vote, what they buy, and all those kinds of things. It's a hairy, thorny issue. And it should be taken a little more serious than I think most people are aware of. It's just kind of because you don't really see it. You don't really see that every single website you go to, Google knows. You don't really know that Facebook has even if you're not on Facebook, guess what? Facebook has a profile of you. They know all about you, even though you're not on their website. It's kind of scary. Jonathan?
Kind of.
Yeah, it's sort of like cyber stalking and identity theft will go to a whole new level with this. And there are a few articles I read on this that do go into more detail about what the risks really are and how the next generation of AI can bring that an order of magnitude more of a problem, especially for privacy issues. We already have privacy issues. A good hacker can get into all your data. So it's like, what are you going to do? Well, you can use an AI to thwart an AI, but are we just throwing, things at each other and hoping something sticks?
It's like you swallow the spider to catch the fly kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there is one quote from an AP article here. The article is "Scientists warn of AI dangers but don't agree on solutions." And I'll just read this quote from there. And I think this is from a Hinton, who was one of the guys who originally invented AI or studied it his whole life anyway. These things will have learned from us by reading all the novels that were ever were, and everything Machiavelli ever wrote, how to manipulate people. And he was addressing a crowd attending an MIT Technology Review's EM Tech Digital Conference. Even if they can't directly pull levers, they can certainly get us to pull levers. So the idea that these things are just going to be and there's nothing we can do about it is not true. We write these things, and the EU has their solution, but there has been a call from the United Nations to start doing some regulating on this, or get a system for regulation that would be, at least for this generation of AI, usable. Again, this is another thing, just like any kind of criminal activity, it will evolve with the technology. So you have to evolve your standards and how you deal with the illegal use of things using the new technology as well to counter their use of the new technology. And that's going to be a forever arms race. It always is. There is an awful lot of discussion of AI and weapons development, autonomous weapons development. And that's some other stuff that is incredibly scary. They're already using autonomous drones to target people in various militaries around the world. So this is a scary thing, yes, and it's getting scarier. And by next year, it will be 10 times as scarier. But, as I said, we're getting crisis immunity because this is just one more serious issue that we have to deal with. And as at our level in the pecking order here, as far as international governments are concerned, we have to collectively act if we're going to do anything at all. So, Kelly?
Yeah, you're right. And the one thing we might have operating in our favor is what Aaron and I mentioned, is that the computers don't always learn what they're meant to be. So I kind of got the vision of, when you mentioned in reading all the books, them reading Machiavelli's Prince and Moby Dick and trying to control all the whales, right?
Well, that one was just so popular, right? The one, we got to get that one.
But if you'd like to see more from the nonprofits, you can get more of us by clicking right here.